Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the Salebox for the 27th of June 2014. My name is TotalBiscuit, giving you a roundup of today's Steam deals. If you missed out on yesterday's, then you can check out the video, and of course check out the deals themselves, which you can find beneath the Big Summer Adventure section, and below Community Choice as well. If you're quick enough, by the way, in the next couple of hours, I'd strongly suggest you grab Fear, because that is an incredible, absolutely incredible game for a very cheap price indeed. But it is only going on for the next few hours, so you might not be quick enough. Regardless, let's begin, shall we, with Transistor. 25% off, not a big discount, but not exactly an expensive game to begin with, and it has only been out now for about a month. So it's reasonable that they wouldn't discount it too heavily. Transistor is easily one of my favorite games this year so far. It tells a good, if somewhat vague, story. It has an intriguing world, and the actual world building itself is very strong indeed. And what it does better than Bastion, the game that I suppose you could call it a spiritual successor to, from the same company of course, is that it really builds on the mechanics of the actual game itself, as opposed to Bastion, which was very narratively focused, and its mechanics were competent. Like, they were solid, but they weren't really exceptional. With Transistor, you have a big focus on combat, and that combat can take the form of either real-time or a pause-based combat where you're given a certain set of action points to work with, and that's the type that I liked an awful lot. You can also combine one ability with literally any other ability in the game to create a unique loadout, which means there's a decent amount of replayability if you're into the combat system. And there is, of course, a New Game Plus mode as well to keep things going. If you are just looking for the narrative, then you'll probably enjoy about 4 hours worth of a good, if, again, somewhat vague narrative. But it's got a phenomenal soundtrack, it's an absolutely gorgeous game, and it's got some really great ideas going for it. It's a nice little discount. If $20 was too much for you, then maybe $15 is more up your alley. Assetto Corsa, 50% off. That is still in early access. I believe the last time I did a sale box on this, it was also in early access. Yeah. So, this game is a racing simulation, and it is, for the most part, well received amongst the racing sim community. Have I played it? No. I'm not really into racing simulations. Is it done yet? Also, no. It's been in early access for probably about 9 months now, and it's still sort of trucking ahead. It's currently on version 0.20, so it looks like they have quite a bit to go. And apparently it also has a few issues with joypad support, so if you're not using a racing wheel, then you may struggle a little bit with this title. If you are a racing sim fan, though, you should be reading some of those reviews on the Steam page from those who have clearly invested a lot of time in it. For the most part, the impression seems to be very good, but just bear in mind that it is a racing simulator, not arcade action, and the amount of content in there is currently fairly limited. Deus Ex Human Revolution Director's Cut, 75% off. You know, a Director's Cut sounds like it would be better, right? Well, in some ways it is, but the Director's Cut, which has actually replaced the regular version of Deus Ex Human Revolution, is in some ways actually worse than the previous one. And that's, I imagine, got quite a lot to do with the way that they ported some of the content over from the Wii U in the first place. There's actually a laundry list of problems that this game has, which don't appear to be within sight of getting fixed. It seems like Eidos doesn't have any interest in getting everything sorted out. There's been a few things that have been resolved, but it's still a bit buggy and actually doesn't look as good as the first version, if you can believe that. Something to do with the way that they've handled HDR and shadows in the Director's Cut version. So that's not brilliant, but the game itself is of course absolutely phenomenal. There's no doubt about that. Awesome FPS RPG, very much set of course in the future, cyberpunk, with a focus on a kind of a weird moral quandary, I've got to say. The idea that getting augmented and having you changed as a person is a bad thing, which is a bit strange, considering that right now we have hip replacements without any problems. So I do feel that the actual moral conflict within that game was a little bit contrived. But if you can ignore that, then what you'll find is a really cool conspiracy, excellent level design with a lot of exploration to be had, and a good amount of customization. Although what I will say is the game focuses maybe a little bit too much on one playstyle. It really does reward non-lethal perhaps more than it should, and it doesn't make non-lethal combat particularly difficult either. So that's something that I think you need to turn up the difficulty in order to really experience. Regardless, though, Deus Ex Human Revolution is absolutely fantastic. And Director's Cut includes extra content and reworked boss fights, which is probably the biggest issue that I had with that game. The boss fights are terrible. Director's Cut does fix that up quite nicely. Space Engineers, 33% off. Another early access game. At the moment, they're working on the survival mode for this. It's not complete, though, not even close. So, what is this thing? Well, it's like Minecraft in space. It allows you to mine and create spaceships and space stations and all that kind of stuff, which, frankly, is right up my alley. That said, though, it's still in early access. It still has problems with multiplayer with large numbers of people, and the survival mode isn't really fleshed out yet. So, if you're not wanting to just sit there and build without any real consequence, then you're gonna have to wait on this one until they finish the survival mode up properly. Once this thing is actually done, it could end up being one of the best games on Steam. What an awesome way to take the Minecraft creative model and turn it into something that I actually give a damn about. But it ain't done yet. So just bear that in mind. If you're looking to do some building, then yes, Space Engineers is pretty good with a few friends. If you're looking to do a proper survival experience and really flesh things out, well, it's not quite there yet. It's got a lot of work still to go. Payday 2, 80% off. Pretty big sale on this one. And it does not, unfortunately, include all of the DLC. That said, it includes a decent amount of it, and there's a lot of free DLC and updates with that particular game as well. So, it's hard to complain. The actual DLC pack costs quite a bit, and that's mostly because of the recent release of the big bank heist, which is still full price, but a lot of the other stuff, including the weapons packs, are very cheap, and a lot of the heists are, of course, free for this. So, what is it? Well, it's a co-op heist sim. It's a shooter, first-person shooter specifically, and you have to take part in various crimes against increasingly difficult waves of police that are highly unrealistic and you will slaughter in their hundreds. Now, it is possible to take on these heists and not actually alert the police at all, which is the most intriguing part of the game, as far as I'm concerned. Good planning and solid playstyle can actually lead to a completely clean run. But it's very difficult to do without first kind of leveling up and getting a feel for what the game involves. With the basic equipment, you really don't have the means to do it. With the basic skills, you don't have the means to do it. And this is a game where you do have to level up your character. The main problem with that is the AI is goddamn useless. So there are a few heists that you can solo, but it's a bit of a grind to actually get your character to the position where he could be useful online. And most people are going to ignore you online if you're low level. So the best thing to do with this is to get yourself a 4-pack and make sure you got some friends and start from the bottom. And then perhaps you can be here. Even if you do end up triggering the alarms, though, it's still a pretty decent horde shooter, where you got 4 guys who are fending off wave after wave of increasingly difficult police, while attempting to complete objectives at the same time. It's very tense, and it's got some interesting, unique mechanics. It does one of the best jobs that I've seen in video gaming when it comes to simulating something like a bank job or a jewelry store heist or anything along those lines. It's good. It really is. Assuming that you have friends to play it with. Tropico 4, 85% off. This does include discounts on all the DLC. Is Tropico 4 any good? Well, it is a city builder in which you play the dictator of a corrupt banana republic, and you try and manage a fairly small number of citizens through things like revolutions, political change, and, of course, tourism, and dealing with the United States and the USSR. It's pretty good. I think that Tropico 5 is better, but it still hasn't really found its end game, unfortunately. It's getting there, but even Tropico 5 has some issues in the late game with just, like, losing its direction. Tropico 4 really doesn't have too much of an end game per se, but it's still a very enjoyable city sim nonetheless. It's fairly laid back. It's got a good sense of humor about it, and a great deal of scenarios and campaign play to have. It also simulates a small kind of island paradise quite nicely. If you're looking for tens of thousands of citizens, you're probably not going to have it. Whatever the case, the DLC, for the most part, is pretty worthless, but you can buy the Collector's Bundle, which comes with all of it, for a small increase in price, which includes, by the way, Modern Times. Modern Times was the major expansion, and everything else is really small. Their DLC model's pretty terrible. I don't like it at all. What happened with the DLC is they'd release a $5 pack, which had a new building, a new trait, a new outfit, and 1 new mission. And they do that over and over and over again. If you do pick up the Collector's Bundle, you get all that stuff plus Modern Times, which seems like the way to go. It's not a huge increase in price, and that will give you a decent amount of new content. But yeah, it's good, and it's certainly a hell of a lot less expensive than Tropico 5, and since the Tropico games are highly iterative, there's no harm in picking up Tropico 4 instead. Wargame Red Dragon, 40% off. Alright, the Wargame series is interesting because it's not an RTS in the traditional sense of the word. You don't have any bases to build. You have a set of forces which you configure as kind of a deck prior to playing the game, and then you deploy your forces based on how many points you have available to you at the time, and you try to secure various points on the map in order to win. It's primarily a multiplayer-focused game. There is now a decent-ish campaign mode, but chances are you're probably still going to want to play in multiplayer. The main problem this game has is the fact that the number of units available at the start is absolutely baffling. The tutorial is reasonable this time around, but it's still not really that helpful to figure out what on earth you're actually doing. That's really where the complexity comes from. The actual control of the units is fairly simple to do, although you do have to worry about things like ammunition as well as fuel, so don't have your tanks run out of fuel in the middle of the battlefield and so on and so forth. And of course, friends don't let friends build a bunch of artillery. But it is, if you can get into it, a really enjoyable experience, particularly if you have something of a hard-on for modern military hardware, because they simulate a lot of it in a bunch of different nations. You want to play Sweden? You can play Sweden! Absolutely. Go nuts. But bear in mind, it's going to require a time investment to figure out what on earth is going on with it, and you are best having a look at some of the many guides on YouTube and perhaps playing team games. The game does support up to 20 players at once, which is kind of great, and it does allow for you to control smaller units, kind of like World in Conflict, which makes it a little bit easier to understand. Playing 1v1 can be a veritable nightmare until you understand the game. But it is a very rewarding experience if you get into it. I played a lot of the previous one, Air-Land Battle, and I actually did get into it quite a lot. I haven't really had too much time to play a lot of Red Dragon, although what I did play against the AI was just as enjoyable, and of course the addition of naval units is fun. Age of Mythology Extended Edition, 40% off. I do not call that an incredible discount, and I don't call it an incredible extended edition either. The quality difference between Rise of Nations, the extended edition of that one, and Age of Mythology Extended Edition seems to be fairly large. Like, the graphical improvements that have been made to Age of Mythology, as well as the changes to the UI and the way that the units actually respond to you, is not that brilliant. It's surprising how much they actually charge for this. $30, which does of course include the expansion pack. But many people have been struggling with this. Similar to Age of Empires 2, the multiplayer has problems and the AI is an absolute mess, which means that the game actually is not really overhauled that well in comparison to things like Rise of Nations. It's difficult to justify the $30 price tag for this one. Don't get me wrong, at the time, Age of Mythology was absolutely fantastic. It was a wonderful RTS, but it is certainly showing its age, and I think it's maybe a little bit cheeky to re-release the game for $30 and claim, oh yeah, this is totally the extended edition. Like, how exactly? The critical response to this was not particularly good either, and I believe rightfully so. They could have done an awful lot more when it came to improving this, and they elected not to do that. So it's a pretty hard game to recommend, honestly, in its current state. Not particularly impressed by what they did with it. Wait for it to get cheaper and wait for it to get bloody well patched. And finally, Grand Theft Auto 4 Complete Edition, 80% off. This is a game that didn't run particularly well at launch, unfortunately, and still is a bit dodgy, frankly. It depends on your setup. It's really kind of random. It's not the best port ever, but performance optimization has been, for the most part, dealt with and tweaked, and things like the rather aging graphics engine have been improved by mods like, say, IC Enhancer. It is worth noting, though, that this thing is completely bagged down with DRM, Rockstar Social Club, Secure ROM, and Games for Windows Live, if you can actually believe that. Yeah, they really did lay this one on, didn't they? Which has caused a number of problems with logins and things like having to stay online at all times. It's a bit of a pain in the arse, to say the least. But if you can get past that, and if your computer actually runs it well, then you will find the usual level of Grand Theft Auto quality, including, of course, Ballad of Gay Tony, which, in my opinion, was actually better than the original game itself. It had that humor element that Grand Theft Auto 4 was lacking. And Gay Tony did manage to bring that back quite nicely. Lost in the Dam was okay, but Yeah, the second expansion that they did was a hell of a lot better. Regardless, though, it's GTA. You know exactly what you're getting yourself into. And, of course, GTA 5 is on the way, and God knows how that's going to run. We will see if Rockstar actually makes a competent port for once. It's rare that they do so. All right, folks, that's me done for the day. Thank you very much for watching the Salebox, and I will see you next time.